In the dim glow of a Nevada dawn, Captain Sarah Thompson stared at the horizon where the desert met the sky. The air was still, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and jet fuel. She adjusted her flight suit, feeling the weight of expectations pressing like an invisible hand on her shoulder. They all thought she'd break all her commanders, her fellow pilots, even the whispers in the mess hall. But today, in the cockpit of the B-2 Spirit, she would prove them wrong. Sarah had always been the outlier. Born in a small town in Ohio, she grew up watching planes streak across the endless blue, dreaming of touching the clouds. Her father, a mechanic at a local airport, taught her the beauty of engines and the thrill of flight. "The sky doesn't care about doubts, kiddo," he'd say, wiping grease from his hands. But the Air Force did. At 32, Sarah was one of the few women qualified to pilot the stealth bomber, a ghost in the night sky. Her record was spotless, simulations aced, training missions flawless. Yet, the murmurs followed her like shadows, too emotional, too fragile under pressure. "She'll crack when it counts," they'd say, not quite out of earshot. The mission briefing that morning had been tense. In a windowless room at Nellis Air Force Base, Colonel Harlan read paced before a holographic map. "Operation Shadow Veil," he announced, his voice gravelly from years of command. "The target, a fortified enemy installation in a hostile region, shrouded by advanced radar nets." Intelligence showed overlapping detection grids, like a web waiting to snare any intruder. The B-2, with its bat-like wings and radar-absorbing skin, was the only bird that could slip through. But it required precision, a dance on the edge of invisibility. Sarah sat at the back, her hands folded in her lap. Beside her, Major Tom Ellis shifted uncomfortably. He was her co-pilot, a veteran with salt and pepper hair and a mustache that hid his smirks. "You sure about this, Thompson?" he'd asked earlier, over coffee. "High-stakes stuff. No room for second thoughts." She met his gaze steadily. "I've got this, Major." Just like always. But inside, a flicker of doubt stirred. What if they were right? What if the pressure crushed her? As the sun climbed higher, Sarah walked the tarmac toward the hangar. The B-2 loomed there, a sleek black silhouette against the concrete, its curves designed to defy detection. Technicians swarmed around it, checking avionics and loading payloads. She paused, letting the moment sink in. The air hummed with activity, a symphony of tools and voices. This was her sanctuary, where doubts faded into the roar of engines. Climbing into the cockpit, Sarah settled into the seat, the controls familiar under her fingers. Tom joined her, buckling in with a nod. "Weather's clear, winds minimal," he said, flipping switches. The canopy sealed with a hiss, enclosing them in a world of screens and dials. Pre-flight checks rolled by in a rhythm. Hydraulic screen, stealth coating intact, fuel at capacity. Sarah's heart beat steadily, a calm anchor amid the buildup. They taxied to the runway, the bomber's tires rumbling softly. "Tower, Shadow 1 requesting takeoff," Sarah radioed, her voice even. Clearance came swiftly. She pushed the throttles forward, and the B-2 surged, lifting into the sky with deceptive grace. Below, the base shrank to a patchwork of buildings and runways. They climbed to cruising altitude, the world blurring into a canvas of browns and blues. Hours passed in the quiet hum of flight. Sarah monitored the instruments, her mind drifting to memories that grounded her. Back home, her mother worried endlessly, sending care packages with handwritten notes. "Stay strong, my girl. You've got wings for a reason." Sarah smiled faintly. The relatable ache of separation, the pull of familia, these were the quiet pressures that shaped her. Not the battlefield kind, but the everyday ones that tested resolve. As they crossed into international airspace, tension began to weave its threads. The mission clock ticked down. Approaching the edge of the hot zone, Tom announced, his tone sharpening. The radar display flickered with distant pings of enemy sensors probing the ether. Sarah adjusted their course, dipping lower to hug the terrain. The B-2's systems hummed, scattering radar waves like whispers in the wind. But doubts crept in, subtle at first. "You hear the scuttlebutt," Tom said casually, eyes on his panel. "Some brass think we're rushing this, especially with..." "Well, you know." He didn't finish, but Sarah knew. With a woman at the stick, she gripped the yoke tighter, her jaw set. "Let them talk, Major. We'll show them." The first real challenge came at dusk. As they neared the border, a storm front rolled in unexpectedly, thunderheads towering like sentinels. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the cockpit in stark flashes. "This could play havoc with our stealth," Tom muttered. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. Flying through it meant turbulence, skirting it risked exposure to ground radars. She chose the storm, nature's chaos over man's vigilance. The bomber plunged into the clouds, buffeted by winds that howled like ghosts. Rain lashed the canopy, visibility dropping to near zero. Sarah's hand steadied on the controls, compensating for each gust. Her breath came in measured inhales. "Exhale" as a mantra of calm. "Systems holding," she said, voice low. Inside, the pressure built, the storm's fury mirroring the storm in her mind. What if she miscalculated? What if the B-2's fragile invisibility shattered? They emerged on the other side, the night sky clear and star-studded. But relief was short-lived. "Radar lock attempt," Tom warned, alarms beeping softly. Enemy beam swept the area, fingers of energy searching for anomalies. Sarah banked gently, angling the bomber's facets to deflect. The display showed the grid tightening, a noose of detection. Her pulse quickened, but she focused on the rhythm. Adjust, monitor, breathe. Memories flashed at training days under relentless simulators, instructors pushing her to the brink. "Women don't belong here," one had sneered. She'd pushed back, not with words, but with performance. Now, in the real crucible, that fire kindled anew. The relatable problem wasn't just the mission, it was proving her worth in a world that questioned it. Tension rose as they penetrated deeper. The target loomed on the horizon, a cluster of bunkers and antennas lit by floodlights. "5 minutes to drop," Tom said, arming the payloads. Sarah's fingers danced over the controls, fine-tuning the approach. Enemy radars intensified, pings growing insistent. One beam grazed the aim, a near miss that set off a warning chime. "They're on to something," Tom said, tension cracking his voice. Sarah felt it too, with the invisible weight pressing down. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Doubts whispered, "You'll crack, you'll fail." But she pushed them aside, drawing on the emotional depth that others saw as weakness. Her father's words echoed, "The sky doesn't care about doubts." Then, the gentle twist unfolded. As they closed in, Sarah noticed a pattern in the radar sweeps, a rhythmic gap, like a heartbeat with pauses. It was subtle, buried in the data streams. "Hold on," she said softly. Instead of evading head-on, she timed their descent to slip through the lulls, sinking the B-2's path with the enemy's blind spots. It was a gamble, born of intuition honed by years of overlooked insight. The bomber glided silently, a shadow among shadows. Alarms fell quiet. "We're through," Tom whispered, awe in his tone. Sarah released the payloads, of precision strikes that bloomed like distant fireworks on the infrared display. The installation erupted in controlled chaos. Objectives met without a trace. Egress was smoother, the radars disrupted, the night sky a welcoming void. They climbed away, stealth intact. Tom turned to her, a rare smile breaking through. "Damn, Thompson, you didn't just fly Ida, you owned it." Back at base, under the harsh lights of debrief, Colonel Reed waited. His face, usually stern, softened as reports came in. "Mission success, no detections." "They thought you'd crack," he admitted gruffly. "I might have too, but you proved us all wrong." Sarah stood tall, the weight lifting. It wasn't triumph she felt, but a quiet validation, an emotional grounding in her own strength. As dawn broke again over the desert, Sarah walked alone, the B-2 resting in its hangar like a sleeping giant. She thought of her family, of the whispers silenced. The sky had tested her, and she'd soared. In that moment, insight bloomed. Pressure doesn't break the strong, it reveals them. And for anyone facing their own storms, whether in the cockpit or the quiet battles of life, remember this: doubt is just a cloud. Fly through it,